Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna start. This is our first recording. This is amazing. Like Louis, this is Louis Randau. I myself, Yosef Rotman. You all know me.
We are here. We are starting the new projects, new ideas. How how can we do different things for change the world, for make the world more smooth, more peace, more blessed. So everybody, we think everybody should do your part, should do your little things, and that's our little things that we are doing. Bring some words from the Torah, bring some interesting things for talk about, and you can think about what we will talk, and you can make your decision, maybe change your idea, maybe just get a little out from the way that you are now, and you can get a new way and make something different and help somebody, and this will be a long chain, a long one people can do and other people can do also. If you do for somebody, somebody will do for other, and we can be a long.
That reminds me. You should tell that story later about the minister that you met in Brazil, and you gave him the money to help people and to change.
Yeah, it will
Remember,
be,
we tell that story. That's a great story.
could be a
One of
nice
my favorites.
video. Could
Yeah.
be a nice video.
That
Yes,
could be
we
a
can do
video
it
on
there.
itself.
Yes,
Just alone.
that's this.
This is
history.
just
yeah.
a short introduction. This is Louis, my best friend, and we work together. We install Windows, funnily enough, but Louis is from Brazil, and he grew up in Brazil. Now he's living here with us in Florida, Boca Raton, and he is so interested in the Torah that he is studying Torah, even though he's not Jewish yet.
Yeah.
But he studied more Torah than me right now, and he studied all the time. He studied Kabbalah, he studied the mysticism and the secrets of the Torah, and his whole life has changed. He will tell you himself, and he spread so much light in the world. He helped so many people. He'll tell the stories himself, but this inspired me to do my part and to study and do some spreading Torah as well. So we're gonna go.
Really, we inspire each other, because I can see him, I can see what he do, how his life it is, and this inspire me. And because this I can do more than I just could do. I do a little bit more, and we can do together more than alone. That's the point, like Shlomo says.
Yes.
If we have a friend and we do together, we have somebody for help us when we need,
Sure.
right? So that's what are happen here. We are doing together, and we are going.
And maybe you'll throw in some even the Spanish or your language for your folks at home and for your friends that you know all in Brazil. They will understand, and they will get a little bit of the Torah as well. So feel free at any time to insert anything that you think is important. We can insert. Okay, let's get into the Torah part, and then we'll schmooze and we'll talk and have a good time as well. But what I wanted to do this time, because it's our first talk, I just went back to the beginning of the Torah, to Bereshit, which is Genesis. I'm going to talk in both in Hebrew and in English, so people from all faiths can understand. One thing I wanted to add is that people are free to put comments, ask questions if you want, and also give your own interpretation, your own suggestions. We're open to all and any interpretations.
We are not owner of the truth. We are just talking about the Torah, where we can see where the big tzaddik, the big rabbis, what they said about this. So it's not about us. It's about what what we have now. So it's not about us, but you can think whatever you want. But the focus is change something. You should change something. That's the important thing. If you listen the whole book, the whole Torah, and nothing changed in your life, nothing happened. It's like getting from here and get out from here.
That's right. Yep. So we're gonna start with Bereshit. So I'm gonna go like literally passage, quote a few passages and chapters, and we're gonna discuss a little bit. So the Torah starts with the word Bereshit. Bereshit means the first Hebrew word in the Torah is Bereshit. What is Bereshit? Bereshit in Hebrew means in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the world. And the passage starts off in English. The first verse in Genesis, in the beginning, God created the world.
Bereshit bara Elohim.
Elohim. Bereshit bara Elohim. Right. So all the commentaries, the main one being Rashi. Rashi was the most well-known commentary on the Torah. He was born in France in 1040, the year 1040, so about 1,000 more years ago, and he interpreted the Torah. And the rabbis said that he actually had divine inspiration in how he interpreted the Torah. So he had actual divine energy, divine spirit from God, and he interpreted the Torah. So most of the interpretations are given by him, if not all. But we're going to focus on the first one, the Rashi. On the first passage, he interprets and says, why did the Torah start with this story of God creating the world? The Torah could have started with anything else, and it would have been a lot more interesting. Like, Torah could have started with the first commandment. You know, we have the 10 Commandments. Torah could have started with the 10 Commandments. I mean, that's a big one. You know, 10 Commandments, that's like everybody knows.
Yeah.
Torah could have started with the first commandment to the Jewish people, the first of the 613. We know the 613 commandments. First one being the commandment to bless the new moon and to sanctify and make the month holy on the first day. That's a big one. All the holidays in our book, in the Torah, come from that, just from that alone. So why did the Torah start with this story that in the beginning God created the world? So Rashi, this commentary, points out, very fascinating, and this is talked about all over. It's a fascinating interpretation. He says, the only reason God started the Torah, gave the Torah to Moses, with the first passage being, I, God, created the world. Hashem, God says, Hashem. By the way, Hashem is God. So if I ever say Hashem, is God. Hashem says, I created the world in the beginning. I created the heaven and the earth. So Rashi says the reason is that God wanted to tell and make known to all mankind that God created the world, and therefore He owns the world. He's in charge of everything, and therefore if God chooses to give a certain part of the world to a certain nation, then that's God's choice. We can't question that. If God decides then to take it away from that nation and give it to someone else, we can't question that. And that is really the cornerstone. That's the beginning of everything. That God creates the world, He chooses who to give the world to, who to give what land to who. And the first instances, like in the first few chapters in the Torah, it talks about God giving the land to Abraham. God, first of all, tells Abraham, I'm going to give this land of Canaan to you and your children. So, Rashi, the commentary again, says, right there in the first passage, if any of the world, of the other nations come to you, and they say to Abraham, they say, why do you get this land? Why does Canaan belong to you? The answer that Abraham gives is that God created it, and He chose to give it to Abraham and his descendants. That's the only reason. And we'll see throughout the progression of the Torah how things changed, and the land changed hands and came back into the Jewish hands, and then was lost again and then came back. So let's start from the beginning. So again, after God created the world in the beginning, the first people to live in the land are um,
Adam
Adam,
Arishon.
right? Adam Rishon, right? And we know the whole story of Adam and Eve. I'm not going to go into the details right now. We'll leave that for a separate talk. But after Adam and Eve, Noah is born. Noah, and we know Noah, the flood, the big flood. That's where I want to start, because what happens was until the time of Noah, the world was fairly peaceful. Everything was going smooth, pretty much, and the generation of Noah become corrupt. The Torah tells us this. The Torah tells us that all the generation become corrupt. They were stealing, and they were persecution. They were doing a lot of terrible things, immorality, right?
Things,
and the Torah
yes.
lists all the things. A lot of the things again are commented by Rashi about the details. But the Torah says clearly in the passages in the portion of Noah that the world became corrupt, and God said to Noah, "The world is corrupt. I've changed my mind. I thought this was going to be a good plan, and it's all corrupt. I'm going to therefore wipe out humanity." Right there and then, God tells Noah, "Get in the boat with your family. You're going to be saved," because Noah was a righteous person. The Torah tells us that. That's in the passage of the Torah. Noah was the only righteous person, and him and his family. God says, "You and your family are going to be saved. Go into a boat, and God's going to destroy the world." Now, you can ask yourself a question right there. I always thought about it, and especially today, with this whole woke and this wokeism, and people are confused. I would say, why does God create to say, "I'm going to destroy the whole world"? Why doesn't just God say, "Noah, you must have a few friends that are good guys. You must know a few guys in town. Let's save a few people, and many people actually that were good, and just find the people that are corrupt and destroy them." But God says, "No, I'm going to destroy the whole world," and He does it. So what I take from this is what I'm taking from this is that when a generation in general, the whole generation is bad and they're corrupt, you have to get them, wipe them out, and start again. If it's the new beginning. If it's a few people, that's different. But here we're talking about majority of the people. Everybody was in corruption. You know, have sometimes countries like that.
What was different from when the angels, when the God came to Abraham and was destroy Sodom,
Right.
Because in the Morah, because there Abraham says, "Hey, could be some 50 people, could be 30, 20, and he could save somebody from there."
He tried to save some of the people.
Yes. And with Noah, God says, everybody is corrupt, so nobody will be saved like that.
And so God punishes the world, and we know what happened then. After Noah, we go to Noah's children. Now, Noah had 3 children listed in the Torah. Shem was the oldest, then there was Ham, the middle son, and Yafet. Yafet was the youngest son. We know the story that happened. There was a brief story that they uncovered their father. They made their father naked, and they did some terrible things to their father. And the two of them, the two younger ones, were involved. The older one, Shem, he turned his face. He didn't want to look at his dad, and he wasn't involved. And because of that, God cursed the two sons. He cursed mainly the middle one, the middle son, Ham, that they will be slaves. And the younger son was also cursed. He will also be dispersed. The details are we're not going to go into them now, but the main point I want to bring out that the oldest son, Shem, who wasn't involved in the corruption and in causing his father shame, and this was really like the first immoral act in the Torah.
Yes.
After the flood. What happens is that God tells Shem, the oldest son, you will live in the land of Canaan, and you will live on, and you will multiply and be successful. And he was. Shem eventually lived. It says in the Torah he lived in the Canaan, and for a long time him and
long time.
It took hundreds of years. They lived there, and his descendants lived there. And from Shem, the Torah lists like a list of 50 people here in the Torah. This is in the second chapters in in the portion of Noah, right after the flood. Torah lists 50 of Noah's children. After Shem had children, and his great grandchildren, till it came to Abraham. And the Torah lists all of them, so it's not like we don't know where Abraham came from. He came directly, and it's listed there in the Torah, came directly from Shem, who was the son of Noah. So we already now know where Abraham came from, who he was, and where he came from.
We have the roots.
We have the roots. In the Torah, this is in the Torah. You can look in the passages in the portion of Noah. So Abraham is born, comes from Shem, and between the time of Shem and Abraham, there was a shift in the whole world.
Okay.
What happened was, after Shem was living in Israel, he was living in wasn't called Israel, Canaan, which is Canaan. He was living in that country, where today you have was Syria and Israel and Iraq, and that whole area was all Canaan. And other kings came in and fought off Shem, and they kicked Shem out. They destroyed those kings. They fought them off, and they inherited. The main one was Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
Canaan inherited and fought Shem, and took the land away from Shem. And they stole from Shem, and they lived there. And that's at the point where
started the wars.
They started the wars. There was the famous wars of the 5 kings against the 5 kings, and Abraham got involved. That's the time.
For the first war.
The first war in the Torah, exactly, where 5 kings came. There were 5 kings around that land in Canaan, and they fought Shem, and they kicked them out. And Abraham went to help those 5 kings. Interestingly enough, like how he got involved, I don't know why he gets involved, but he goes, and it says that the 5 kings who attacked, the 5 smaller kings attacked the bigger kings, the most powerful kings, and they were going to lose. So Abraham gets involved, and he wins for them. And he wins, and he gets back all the people. He takes all the captives back that belong to the kings, the 5 kings, and he brings them back. He saves them from the war. And the main king was Melchizedek. If you heard the name Melchizedek.
Remember this name?
Yes, he was the king of Shalem. Was Shalem. Now, where does the name Shalem come from? Jerusalem. In Hebrew, Yerushalem is Jerusalem. So the first king, he wasn't Jewish. He lived there in the time of Canaan. His name was Melchizedek. And he came out after the war, came to greet Abraham, and he said, "Wow, thank you for winning the war for us. Can I have back all my people and all the people you brought back that you captured for us?" Abraham says, "Sure, you could take all the men." And he offers to pay Abraham. He says, "You could take all the booty from the war." Abraham says, "I don't want anything. Just give me back my family, my people, and I'm good. We're good." And he makes a treaty with them, and he lives there in Canaan. After that, he lives in Canaan, and Abraham lives in that land in Canaan for hundreds of years.
Yes.
I mean, Abraham only lived 175 years, but he lived for many, many years, 100 years in that land. In between living there, he went to Egypt for a while because there was a famine. I'm not going to get into the story, but he lived in Canaan for a long time. The Torah says clearly that he lived in Hebron. Everyone knows the town Hebron in Israel, which in those days it was Canaan, but it had the name in the Torah, had the same name as it has today. The land of Hebron, the city of Canaan, the same name. And that's the original place where Abraham lived. He lived there for 25 odd years, and then he lived in Beersheba, which is also the name that is still called today, Beersheba. They call it Beersheba, right? Beersheba. Abraham lived there for 25 years, listed in the Torah. This is in the Torah. And he lives there, and he made a treaty with the kings that lived there. He made a treaty even with the Pelishtim, who were the Philistines of those times, the original Philistines that lived there. And they lived there side by side. They lived together. They made a treaty. At one point, Abraham digs wells where he lived. His business was digging wells and to get water for the people and for his people, for the animals. They had a lot of cattle. And he became rich. Abraham became rich off the land and off the cattle that he produced and so on, and they lived together, and he became very wealthy, and all that wealth he gave over to his son Isaac. After Isaac was born, the Torah says that Abraham gave all his wealth to Isaac right before Isaac goes to meet Rebekah. That's the turning point when Isaac goes to meet Rebekah, and who goes to find Rebekah for Isaac?
Was
His servant. Abraham's servant Eliezer. Eliezer was not Jewish. He was the servant. He goes and he finds the wife Rebekah, and the Torah tells us at that point that Abraham gave all his wealth to
his family, yes.
And gave it to his servant Eliezer, and he tells him, go and find a wife and tell her that I am giving to Isaac, whoever marries Isaac, I'm giving him all my wealth. So everything
that
he
big heritage.
Yeah. So we're going to look in one passage here, which is very interesting. This is in chapter 12, in the 7th passage. At this point, Abraham is living in Canaan. He's living there with his nephew Lot, who he just saved from the war, and he went to save him, Lot. And they're living in the land of Canaan. This is the first time where God appears to Abraham. Till that time, Abraham didn't know a God. Everyone in his time was serving idols. They were all serving idols, different gods.
Yeah. His dad.
Even Abraham's dad was serving idols. They didn't know about a God. The first time God is mentioned is right here, because Abraham. This is again in Rashi. This is quoted by our commentary, Rashi. That Abraham was looking around trying to find who is God. He looked at the heavens, he looked at the sun and the moon, and he figured out that there has to be a God. It can't be that all this just came into creation by itself. So he's looking and searching, and in this passage, chapter 12, passage 7, it says, and Adonai, which is God, appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants I will give this land. Which land? The land that Abraham's living in.
He was on that part. He was in
Canaan.
In Canaan.
So he's living in this land in Canaan, and God says, "I will give you to your descendants. I will give this land." So then Abraham builds an altar, and he blesses God, and he brings sacrifices to thank God for that. Torah tells us this whole story. I'm going to take a small break and have a drink. We're going to make a blessing to God, just thanking God for giving us this beautiful drink, and in general blessing God for all the creation in the world. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyah bidvaro.
Amen.
So, after that time, where God promises Abraham that he's going to give this land to his children, he appeared to Abraham, and at that time, Abraham was living in a place called Shechem. Now, Shechem is in Hebron. Remember, it's still called that today, Shechem. And he was living there in Shechem. And then he goes down to Egypt because there was a famine. And we know the whole story in Egypt, how the king stole his wife and took his wife away. Then God punishes the king, and he gives back his wife, and he gives Abraham lots of presents, and he sends him. Basically, they took when Abraham goes down to Egypt, they took his wife as a hostage, and he was taken by the king because they were corrupt. It says in the Torah at that time, in Rashi, the commentary, it says that people in Egypt at that time was so corrupt, and they were so decadent that any good-looking woman that came to town, they would take her, and they knew this. So the king, after taking Abraham's wife, and realizing what a mistake he did, he gave back Abraham's wife, and he gave him lots of blessings, and he gave him gifts. He gave him so much gifts, he made him rich. And he said, I'm so sorry, and he let him go, but he even blessed him, and he told his army, you better protect them and send them back and guard them till they get back home to Canaan. And they did that. So we see the difference, how after he realized what he did, he gave him the blessings and gave him gifts and sent him back home without harming them after realizing what a mistake they did. So Abraham goes back to the land and he settles in Hebron. At this point he settles in Hebron and he lives there for 26 years. And was all peaceful. He's living there. We're going to go to the next passage. In this passage, after again living in Hebron for about 26 years, again God comes to him. This is chapter 14, passage 24 in the Torah. In the Bible, in the Torah. God says, after these events, God comes to Abraham again in a vision, and he says, don't fear, I am your shield. Your reward is very great. And so here God just gives him support. He gives him like assurance, I'm with you. Don't worry, I'm still with you. And
be strong.
Be strong, and no matter what happened till now, you're going to be fine. And the blessing I gave you before is going to stand. You will be fine. And Abraham accepts, and he goes on. But he asks God there and then. He says, "How will I know that this promise is going to be fulfilled? How do I know that this promise that you gave me, that my children are going to inherit this land that I'm living in right now? How do I know it's going to really happen?" So God says, "Don't worry. I'm going to make a promise and a pact." And God tells him, take 2 animals and split them in half. We know the passage. This is in chapter 15. And Abraham does this, and he makes a pact, which is like a bond, a promise with God. God promises him, and he says, this is the promise I'm giving you, that I'm going to give your children the land. So right there and then, God promises him again. Then, in chapter 15, passage 14, God tells Abraham at that time, he says, hey, by the way, your children and your descendants are going to land up in Egypt as slaves for 400 years. He tells him this before it happens. And Abraham is stunned, and he begs. Now this is commentary. In the commentaries, Rashi brings this as in commentary because it doesn't say this clearly, but we know this from all the commentaries. Abraham beseeches and begs God, no, why should my children go and be slaves in Egypt? And back and forth, and God says, no, that's the best thing for you. But after 400 years, which ended up being only 210 years because of the righteousness of Abraham and his children, they leave after 210 years. But God tells him, after 210 years, you're going to leave, your children will go back to Egypt, back to Canaan, go back to the land of Canaan, and they will go to Israel. And that's what happened. We know, finally, after 210 years, the children of Israel left Egypt in the most horrific way after God punishes King Pharaoh with 10 plagues. Finally,
the history again, there we know.
Right? But that's another interesting point. Here's another example. After God, the Jews leave Egypt, after 210 years of being slaves, again, we see this idea where God completely wipes out all of Egypt at the sea, at the splitting of the sea. I mean, God could have said, all right, we'll punish King Pharaoh, because he didn't listen. I told him, let my people go, and if King would have let the Jewish people go at that point, they would have been fine. They would have lived in Egypt, and the Jews would have gone on to Canaan, which became the land of Israel. But no, King Pharaoh was hard, and he said, I'm not letting the Jews out of being slaves. So God punishes them with 10 slaves, but not enough. God just doesn't just say punish them with 10 plagues and then we'll punish a few of them and the Jews will escape.
And
No,
they
God
will be
wipes
lived.
out the whole Egypt. He completely decimates everybody. Everybody drowns and they're all gone. So again, we see this notion when all the country and all the people were corrupt and they didn't want to listen to God, when God finally says enough is enough, you're going to let the people go or else. So God says okay, and he wipes out all of Egypt.
Yes.
And they all
Everybody.
perish. Doesn't say that anybody survived. Everybody drowns in the splitting of the sea.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to go to the next important point, which is so finally, after Abraham asks God for a sign and a way that he'll know that this promise is going to become true, God makes a pact with him, as we said, and they split an animal in half, and he makes a promise. But that's not enough. In the passage, this is. 52. Interesting. That's 50. Yeah. Here. This is interesting. (15:18) here. Interesting here. In the promise in chapter 15, verse 18, God says to Abraham, "To your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt." This is in the Torah, chapter 18. God says, "I've given the land to your children from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the Euphrates." Chapter 19, passage 19, "The lands of Keniz, Kenizi, and Kadmoni, the cities of Perizzi and Rephaim, and the Amorites, the Canaanites, and the Gretites, and the Jebusites. All this land, these 7 lands I have given to you." So God specifies and tells him which lands he's giving him. All these 7 lands around Israel, around Canaan.
He showed which land will be.
Right. And he says specific, "I'm giving these lands to you." Then we have the story, a very fascinating story of the 3 angels which were dressed up as Arabs that come walking past Abraham's tent. This is right after Abraham does the Brit Milah, which is the circumcision. The first time anyone did a circumcision in the Torah. God commands Abraham to do a circumcision, and he circumcises himself and his son.
On this time he got the second son, right?
Yes, Ishmael.
When the commandment for circumcision come from him, he already had like two kids.
Right. First, right. You're right. First he had. Let's just backtrack.
Yeah.
First, Abraham, 13 years before this, he had a first child, Ishmael, and we know how that happened because Torah tells us clearly in the chapter that his wife Sarah couldn't have any children for like more than 10 years.
She couldn't wait.
But she didn't have any children.
Yes.
So she was upset. She didn't have any children. So she told Abraham, "Listen, you take the midwife, my maidservant Hagar, and you have a child with her. So at least we'll have somebody that will be our children. We'll have somebody to be a child. Otherwise, we're not going to have children." They were like 90 years old then. Abraham was 99 and Sarah was 90, and they thought that was it. They're not going to have another chance. So there and then they had their first child, Ishmael. But again, the child was from the maidservant
Not
Hagar.
with Sarah.
Not with Sarah. So it wasn't their real child. It was what you call
half-son.
son, or not even a half son. It's not well, it's Abraham's son, but not
Abraham's
son.
son,
Right.
yes.
So then God commands Abraham to do the Brit Milah, the circumcision, and he said, this Brit Milah, this circumcision, will be the promise and will be the pact which will ensure that your children will inherit the land of Canaan, which later becomes Israel. This was done through the Brit. Brit is a covenant, which is the promise, and he says your children, all your children will have to have circumcision if they want to be part of my covenant. And that's where the whole notion, the whole idea that the Jews, the people that came from Abraham, the Hebrews, all are circumcised because God commanded him to. It wasn't like they just came up with this idea. God told him, this is the circumcision, and this will be the sign that will ensure you will follow my commandments, and I will give the promise of giving your descendants the land of Canaan. This is the biggest promise. There's nothing major else that happens here. God doesn't promise him much else. He tells him, this is the promise, the bond between us. You're going to inherit this land, your children will, and the sign and the pact is that your children will have to have a circumcision.
They should have this sign.
The sign, and that's the sign. And every Jew has to have a circumcision if they want to be part of the Jewish, the Hebrew
People,
nation.
yes.
The Hebrew people at that time,
yes.
it's called the Hebrew nation, right? So this is like we're going like this is like the beginning. This
Yes.
is like, eventually we're going to get into more of the interesting and the fun commentaries and things.
Yes, because
but we
it's-
have to know the beginning. We have to know where we came from. This is important.
Yes, that's important.
Yeah.
So when the Arab guys came
Yes,
for
okay.
Abraham, now and he spoke to Abraham, Sarah was listening, and now came the promise for Isaac. Yes, nice.
So we're going to touch on that a little bit, that story, because that to me that's also fascinating, because how this whole thing happens. This is a big lesson for me, because listen, Abraham's there, he's in his house in the tent, he's in the desert, and along come three Arab-looking people. We know now from the Torah, the commentaries, that they weren't really Arabs, they were angels. They were three angels.
Yes,
But at the time, Abraham didn't know.
Yes, in the Torah says sometimes angel, sometimes God.
Right.
Right. So that's the point that we're gonna explore more after, because that's just one video for talk about how God shows for Abraham, shows for Isaac, shows for Jacob, how Hashem show for everybody. Like we are talking about the Abraham now, but it's so deep. We have a lot for talking just about this.
We're going to talk about this more. We're going to go back and talk about these things. Let's just finish the main storyline. What I see from this was amazing, that Abraham goes out of his way. He greets the three Arab-looking guests, and he makes them a feast. And it's in the chapters here. He makes them tongue. He takes like 3 full animals and he cuts them up, and he makes like a barbecue, and he gives them the best of the best. Tongue, which is the best of the meat.
And he didn't know who was.
You don't know who it was at the beginning.
No,
right?
he just do.
He does this and this is for guests, and this is we're Arabs. So this just shows that we have to, in humanity, we have to be good and kind to everybody.
No.
Everybody. This was Abraham, and he sees 3, and he takes them in his house. They stayed with him. He gives them water to wash themselves, and he gives them a meal.
On this part, Abraham hit me, punched me like 10 times. I can listen like 10 times that he pushed me. Who leave your door open, the door of your house open, and you call somebody that are walking and come in. Hey, come in. Are you hungry? Come in. Oh, are you thirsty? Come in. Here, have water. I have drink for you. Who do this? Who? Tell me. You know somebody who do this? It's so hard, so difficult. So Abraham works like that. That's how he works. how he has a tent. His tent has no door, no walls, because he want to see who was walking, and he just call and he talk about God. He teach everybody. He talk everybody with everybody about God. Look what we are doing now. We are make a video for talk about God. That's our tools for to do this now. But Abraham doesn't have a cell phone on that time. So what he did, he just talking, hey, come here, let talk a little bit. Come sit, get a beer with me, and let talk with you. Something. Did you know about God? And that's how he did on that time.
So after this story with Abraham and the guests, the three guests, we know the whole story. Goes on from there. They were three angels, and one angel had come to tell his wife Sarah that she's going to have another son, who was Isaac, who was the actual son of Abraham and Sarah. And then right there and then, one of the angels tells Abraham that we're going from here. We're going to Sodom. The famous story how God destroys the Sodom and Amorah, right?
Yes.
Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes.
Right? And at that time, it's interesting now because this was the next time that the Torah talks about another country or another city that was corrupt. And it says in detail in Torah that Sodom and Gomorrah, they were corrupt. They were so corrupt that they wouldn't allow any guests or visitors into their town. If any visitors came in, they would kill them. It said they would take them in the night, they would steal everything from them, and they would kill them. That's this one story. And they did this. They wouldn't let anyone. They didn't want anyone to come in because it would ruin. They were scared it would ruin their economy, and they didn't want to share with anyone. And they were so immoral and so decadent. Finally, God had it. He says, "That's it." And he tells the angels, these same angels, after they left Abraham's house, he says, go and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, Abraham, you would think, all right, that's nice. Abraham could say, okay, bye, go and destroy. What does it have to do with me? But no, Abraham, this Hebrew, he says, whoa, God, why are you going to destroy everybody? Maybe there's some righteous people there. I could find you 50, maybe 40. And he goes in and he starts, making a deal, trying to make a deal with God. God says, you can't even find 50. So Abraham says, what about 40? If I find 40, will you save the whole town? Right? And God says, no, you can't even find 40. He says 30. He says, you won't even find 30. If you find 30, I'll keep everybody, save everybody. He can't even find 10. At that point, God says, Abraham backs off and he says, all right. And God destroys. We know the story. We're not going to go into details. God destroys the whole Sodom. He turns the whole thing upside down. So we see again, when there's a city that's corrupt and everybody is corrupt and immoral, there's no other way, because it's going to leak and it's going to continue. It's going to make other people. Right now, it was only limited to one city. So Abraham didn't. God doesn't have to destroy the whole world like he did at the time of Noah. Yes. It gets a little smaller, and he's only going to destroy this city. And who does he save? He saves one guy in Sodom and Gomorrah who was somewhat good, and his name is Lot. Right? He was Abraham's nephew.
Yes.
And God says to Abraham, you could tell. He tells the angels, you could tell them to leave, and they should run away. Just him and his wife and their children. They ran away, just like a few of them, and he go to another city nearby. They stay there, and the whole Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed. And Abraham, from there, Abraham goes and he moves to Hebron. He moves back to Hebron. After living in the desert for a while, he lives in Hebron again for 25 years. And after that, he does a deal with the king of Philistine, right? Whose name was Abimelech. Abimelech, he was well known. He was the king, and they were friendly. In the beginning, Abraham was living there, and they were friends. Abraham was doing work. He was doing a lot of wells, digging wells and pasturing his animals and all. Yeah. Eventually, the people got jealous. The Torah tells us that people got jealous with Abraham and with his son, with Abraham's son Isaac, that they were digging so many wells and they were becoming so wealthy that the people of Philistine, they started to block up the wells. They just went and blocked up one well after the other. And instead of, again, this is a lesson to us as well. Instead of making a whole fight and going to war with them, Torah doesn't tell us anything like that. Torah says Abraham tried to make a deal with them. He saw it wasn't working. They kept on stopping the wells and stuffing them up and saying, you guys are taking too much. So Abraham moves, Isaac, and he moves to a different part of the land, and he starts working there. They came after him there, and they start to stop the same thing. They block they block his wells, and they stop his business. So he moves to a third place. Finally, he moves to a place that is called Gerar. And in this place, in Gerar, which is close to Canaan, still in the land of Canaan, another city, he builds new wells, they're digging wells, and finally the Philistines leave them alone. And they will find, okay, fine, you moved far enough away from town, and we find you could go and you'll be there, and they will find, and they live there for a while. Eventually from there, they moved to Abraham and moved to Beersheba. Beersheba, which is still there today. He lives in Beersheba, and he lives there for many years. And we'll stop here just for a moment. Anything you want to add to this?
No, we can continue where we stop. We have a nice history for continues after.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on one other point here. This is very interesting here. We're going to go back a little to this interesting point, which is really where I want to go from there to where we are now today. Just briefly. Because originally, Ishmael, the first son of Abraham, is born. And it says that when he's born, this is interesting. It says he is born, obviously, from the maidservant. And what happens is, right before he has this son, Ismail, where all the Arabs come from, original Arabs, the angel, it says this is in chapter 16, passage 6. The angel of God comes, it says, the angel comes to Hagar, which is Abraham's wife, the maidservant. And he says, you're going to have a child. And your children are going to be multiply. They are going to be so many, they are going to be great in number. And he says, you're going to have a child, and you should name him Yishmael. So the angel tells
the name.
It's not like the name came from the hat. Just came out.
I want this name. No.
It was told to him by the angel.
Promises. Yeah. Also.
Yeah. And it says in the passage there, this is in the passage 11, it says, you will call him Yishmael. Why is he called Yishmael? Because in Hebrew, the name Yishmael means Shama-el, which means God heard your prayer. Since this maidservant was praying for a child, God finally heard his prayer, and he said, you will have a child, Yishmael, which means God heard your prayer. And
beautiful name.
Huh?
Beautiful name.
Beautiful name. But in the next passage, not so beautiful, God says in passage 12, this is the Torah, God says, the angel says, you will call him Yishmael, because God heard your prayer. He will be a wild man, uncivilized man. His hand will be against everybody, and everyone's hand will be against him. And in the presence of all his brothers, he will dwell. Now, that's all the Torah says. What does that mean? What does it mean? He will be a wild man, and he will be uncivilized. He will be against, his hand will be against everyone, and in the presence of all his brothers, he will dwell. So we have to look into the commentary, Rashi. This is the main commentary again, which is a fascinating Rashi. But Rashi says, what does it mean, a pere Odom? Pere in Hebrew means wild man. Rashi says, A wild man, uncivilized man, means one who loves the wilderness to hunt wild animals. As it says, he settled in the wilderness of Paran, where he became an expert archer. And then, what does it mean, his hand will be against everybody? It means, it says, this is what the commentary says, he will be a robber. He will steal. And what does it mean, everyone's hand will be against him? It means that everyone will hate him and will attack him. Why will they attack him? Again, it says he is a wild man and he is a robber, steals. And everyone will hate him. So this is very deep. I mean, this is very deep right there. This is like an eye-opener. Where does this come from, that the descendants of Ishmael are already told by the angel, he will be a wild man? Now there is a commentary that I heard recently. It's a fascinating commentary, but again, this is a commentary, not Rashi. This is not Rashi. This is one of the other commentaries of the rabbis that said, usually when in Hebrew you give a term for a man, you say he is Adam, he is a man of such and such. You would say he is a Adam Tov, he is a good man. Mm-hmm. But the name Adam comes first before the title. First he is Adam, a man, and then he is the title, what he is. He is a good man, he is a bad man. But in Hebrew you say Adam Tov, a man of good, or a man of this, or a man of that. But here the Torah says he is a Pera Adam. It says the title first. In other words, he is wild, he is a man. So what is the main thing about him? That he's wild. The first title is that he's wild. He is a man. But the first thing is wild.
It's like the first impression that we have with something.
Yeah. This is interesting because in Hebrew, again, you usually put the Adam, the man, first before the title. Here the Torah itself says he will be a Pere Adam, a wild and then man. So the commentaries say that this was like showing that his main essence is he's a wild person that's by nature person that people will hate him, and he will be controlling of everybody, and he's a man. So
it's like we're gonna know him, we're gonna know them about who they are,
right?
About who they do.
Now I want to just add something, because this is fascinating. I mean, why would God create somebody that's going to be wild and is going to be hated? If God is giving a blessing to somebody, he's blessing this woman, you're going to have a child, finally God has heard you and you're going to have a child. And then God says, oh, by the way, he's going to be a wild man, and basically he's not a man, he's wild, he happens to be a man, and everybody hates him and he's going to cause trouble. Why would God do that? So the same commentary says, which is fascinating, God put this to him as a trial. This is his test. In other words, God wanted them, the Ishmael, the Ishmaelites, their test is they have to stand up against that. If God told them, you're going to be wild, and your nature is going to be wild and to be hated and to be controlling, their test in life and their mission is to stand against that. They have to make sure that they're not wild, they're not hated, they are not a person that's controlling, that controls everybody. That's their mission. The other people, for instance, Abraham and his son Isaac, God didn't tell them you're going to be a wild person. No. Your son Isaac is going to be. In fact, God tells him later in the Torah, your son Isaac will continue your way. He will continue your acceptance of my Torah, and your mission, his mission, and his descendants' mission is to follow the Torah and to follow the 613 commandments. Number one being the covenant to circumcise every one of your children, and to follow my Torah and all my commandments, keep Shabbat, and to keep the prayers, and to keep all the commandments. He doesn't tell him your mission is to be is to fight against being wild, to make sure that you. So you see here, God gives each person a mission. Their mission was to make sure that they're not going to be come out to be like this angel says, you're going to be wild. By the way, his child is going to be wild. Now they know that they have to fight against that. My rabbi used to tell me, how does a person know what his mission in life is? So he said, this is the Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, who was one of the greatest Rebbes in our time, and known by everybody. He says, the way we know what our mission is, what's the hardest thing for me in life? The thing that's the most hardest for me to control. Something that I find so hard. That I know that is God's mission to me to fight against it.
The hard thing.
Something that's the most hard for me, that's my mission in life to stand up against and to fight for.
Wow.
So if I want to know which one I should fight, what should I stand up for, what's my mission in life? There's so many things I could do. The rabbi said,
Find a more hard one.
find the one that's most hard in your life. So let's say in my life, it's hardest thing is to be kind to people. Then that's my mission. I have to be kind to everybody and try to be kind, and so on. So here, the Torah, it's like the angel's giving him a key. The key is
The game's on prime.
the key. The key, he says, is you're going to, by nature, he's going to be wild. He's going to be controlling. He's going to be hated. So then they know, Ishmael knows that their mission in their life and his descendants, they have to stand up against this.
Just do this.
Just do this and you'll be good. You'll be fine.
Guys, you think that what we are talking about this now is different that happened if you open the magazine, if you look at the TV, what you will see? You will see this. What some kind of guys doing? They do things that make this true. They do this that make this true.
Can you give an example?
The promise true. Yes, like if we came, like, let me.
Maybe Brazil?
No, let me come in on complex Argos. If we came for Hamas, and we are talking about the Hamas now, how you know about the Hamas? What you know about them? You know some good things that he did, some construction, some good things that he did, some help, some food for his people. It's like that. It's from that you know him, or you know him from the barbars that he do. Oh, they kill. Barbarism. They kill. They stole. They do a lot of bad things. That's from you know him. And what this mean? This means what God says, or what the angel says. The angel says, your son, your descendants will be like that, and that. And this like 3,000 years ago, and these are happening now. So this what we
One thing I want to stop you is, the interesting thing is that God doesn't tell anyone in the Torah to destroy them. God doesn't, the angel doesn't say, oh, by the way, he's going to be a wild guy, he's going to be hated, they're going to steal, and you should fight them, and you should destroy them. He doesn't say that here.
Really?
Why doesn't he say that? Because God is giving, the angel is giving them a lesson.
opportunity. Do the teshuvah, do different.
They could do teshuvah, they could do repent, they could learn and grow. We don't need to destroy them. We need to love them. We need to be together.
Hey,
But we need to teach them.
come out from there. Like you live like 200 years ago. No, you are 200 years after. So come for this world, the new world now. Look how this world are.
Look at this world.
Look, that is things more important than fight and they shoot and they kill somebody than had. How can I say if you don't like somebody, like I don't like you, I hate.
That
I hate.
enemy, I hate.
I hate. Why? Why you will hate each other? So come from there and come to this world now. This is new world. But
I can't think, I'm just thinking what you're just saying. I can't think of anybody I hate. Like, do you hate anyone?
no,
You must hate somebody.
No, we feel some bad things when on that specific time, but after this, you leave these goals, and if we
You forgot
hate,
about it.
if we hate
I
somebody,
can't think of anybody I hate.
yes, it's so hard.
Maybe somebody did something bad to me, but I got over it. You know, maybe I was upset.
If you
I got over it.
If you not go over, you will be stopped.
You stuck in that
Yes,
for
yes,
whole life.
yes. You have like an anchor in you, and you can go anyway. So we need take out these feelings, these
We need
bad
to get rid
sentiments.
of right bad sentiment. We need to get rid of this feeling.
Yes, yes.
So this is where I wanted to go with for today, because it's again we're going to talk every week about the situation of what we're dealing with today, because this is what our rabbis taught us. The rabbis taught us, learn from the Torah, especially from the portion of the weekly portion which we're discussing now, of what going on in the world. So what happens to be now, this is what's going on. Next week we'll talk about, but we need to learn from this. And I think the lesson is, give the example, and you can talk more. You have a lot of countries in the world that want to make peace. All they want to do is make peace with everybody. Look at
Yes,
Egypt.
yes.
Egypt
More
made
of
peace.
them want
Yeah, more people.
more. They want peace than
Right.
fight.
Before, Egypt was against Israel, like the Hebrew,
Yes.
you know what you call the Hebrews,
Yes.
the
They
Israelis,
wanna fight.
Israelite, right? They were also very wild and wanted to make a war.
Yes.
They made peace. Jordan made peace. Saudi Arabia made
The
peace.
best way, they pass this point.
All the countries are trying to make peace. So this shows the light of God, that the message of God in the Torah, that He didn't say destroy everybody that is wild and is stealing your things. We need to bring more light, more love. So you have most people today in the world, in the countries, they're trying to promote peace and they're making peace.
Yeah.
You have, unfortunately, a few people and a few places that they still want to do the barbarism, like in the time of Sodom and Gomorrah,
Yes, yes.
or like in the time of
Yes.
Noah, or the time of the time where people were immoral, and in the beginning, in the old
Or
ages,
come back.
they want to go back
Yes.
to the way the world was.
Yeah.
The world doesn't want this. The world wants to progress to peace
Yeah.
and everybody to live together. That includes all nations, Christians, Muslims, Jewish people,
Yes, everybody together.
Hindus.
Doesn't
every
matter.
religion must live together
Yes,
in peace.
yes.
That is the meaning of Messiah.
Yeah.
If people will ever ask you, if people ask me, and always they ask you, and I love this question, like, what is Messiah? There's a million interpretations. We couldn't spend more than like hours and hours in what is Messiah.
talk about
But
it.
if we want to say in one word, what's Messiah? Messiah is all the nations of the world living together in peace. That's Messiah. It's not very hard. We see it happening in front of our eyes. That's Messiah. Nothing else.
It's not hard, man.
It's not hard.
Not hard, guys.
Just like
Yes.
Abraham Accords, just like Israel is able to make peace with Egypt, that was his enemy, with Jordan was fighting, was enemies of different countries. They are able to make peace with so-called enemies, which weren't really even enemies. We can all make a peace with people in our own country that are
Yeah.
maybe fighting each other in our own countries.
We just
Republicans and Democrats,
Yes.
lefties and righties.
In the right,
in,
yes.
in Israel, it's the secular and the not say the secular and the Haredim, the very religious.
The Orthodox.
All people, even between ourselves, we
Yes.
must learn to get on, and we must learn to live together and learn from each other and grow.
Yes. Yes,
grow
grow.
from
Yes.
each other.
Yes.
Do you know how much we can learn and grow from each other?
we can do together.
Together. You know, if
Yes.
we work together,
Yes.
we could make a world
Yes.
that we never even imagined. I'll give you another interpretation. People ask me, what is Messiah? What does Mashiach mean? And number two, you know what Messiah means? Mashiach?
Say it.
After the first, number one, that all people will just
In
be
peace.
peace. Number two, all the nations will work together to help all the downtrodden people in the world. So all the people who are poor, all the people who are who are destitute, people who are suffering, hungry. If all the people in the world, all the armies, got together and instead of fighting with each other, said, let's go to every country and build towns and build infrastructure and build highways and build a structure to make water
Bring
and
electricity.
bring electricity to all. Do you know that everybody in the world would not suffer? There would be no
Yes.
suffering. Everybody would have food. Not
Yes.
one person in the world would be hungry today.
Yes.
And it can happen
Yes.
in a matter of 1
Yes.
year. 1
Yes.
year could take the whole,
Yes.
if everybody comes together. And that is what Messiah, that's what's going to happen. It's going to it's happening now. But we're going so slow. We're pulling pulling our heels.
But why,
This-
Yossi, we are going slow? Because
why?
Because we are doing slow. Because that thing that we need to do, that the word should be for Mashiach come, it's things that we need to do, but everybody needs to do. Everybody needs to do. When everybody do, that's the point.
Yeah.
So when everybody do, so today we have a lot of guys doing. We are doing something here. Somebody doing there. Somebody doing there. You are doing there on where you are, but it's not everybody yet. So that's why we need for this message and talk about the whole time, because that's what we need to do for bring him back. Bring him for not bring him back, like bring him for make the word like all the promises that we have on the Torah.
Right.
So it's nice.
You
And
say bring him back, but it's not so wrong, because the Christians, for instance, their faith, they believe is bringing him back.
bring him back.
Messiah,
for-
they say Messiah came, which is fine.
yes, that's no
We're-
problem.
Again, we in the Jewish religion we have a slightly different interpretation, but it doesn't matter. We're bringing him or bringing him back. It doesn't matter.
That's not the point.
It's not the point.
It's not the point that we want. Look what we are talking about.
The point is what we're saying, that
It's
we will work
helping-
together.
It's you make something. If you are a Christian, let some words there on comments and say something for us, and we're gonna answer
about
you,
it.
and we're gonna talk about it. You can
If-
come here. We can sit with us, get some Coke
And
We
cigars?
we probably don't get a cigar, but that doesn't have a problem.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you, let me tell you more. If you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu, if you're any religion, come here. We can talk and we can sit together and we hug each other. And
Yes,
like everybody.
yes.
You know, I have friends who are Muslim. I have friends who are Christian. I have friends that I talk to the same thing we're talking now to Muslim, and they are crying. They're crying. They're saying how amazing this is. I wish more people will talk about this. I wish people will understand. Do you know, when I went to Israel last time, I went to an Arab store, like a little store in the market, to buy something. And I was talking to him about this, about trying to get on together and talk peace. He was like basically crying. He was saying, I wish we need more people to talk about this. He said the same thing. So it's not like it's hard for people. It's only we talk about this. Everybody wants this.
Yes, and it comes with respect,
Oh.
because everybody can believe whatever he wants and could think
With respect.
with respect.
We must
And-
respect
yeah,
each other's
yeah.
opinions.
And you could think whatever you think, but what you think, it's not the truth. If you compare with I think, it's just different thinking. So you have your thinking,
beliefs.
your beliefs, and I have my beliefs. I'm not 100% true, and you aren't also. So that's the point. We are sit and we are talk about, and it's good. But we need to talk about why we can't talk about, why we don't.
We must
can't.
talk about.
We must talk about. We should talk about. For I think the first step for we resolve some problems, it's talk. If you have your wife and your marriage is not good, you have something wrong, you sit with her and say, hey honey, look, I know I did something wrong, or you are doing this wrong, we need to change this for make our marriage better. So that's it, how it works. We need start to talk about, and that's the point. And I respect what you think, you respect what I'm thinking, and we can talk whatever we want. No offense, no bad words, and we are be good. We are be great,
This was really good.
right? I think.
Yeah. This is our first. This is really good. I mean, this was for our first session. I think it's amazing. We learned a lot. We studied a lot. Maybe next time we won't study too much. We're gonna get more straight into the fascinating commentaries and
Of the saints,
stories
the rabbis.
by the rabbis and
Yes.
different people, and stories about what's happening today. You know, for instance, you see on one hand, you see so much humanity happening today, and people on the other hand,
Yes.
around the world, so
Also,
many people
try to
helping,
help. Try to
and
help,
People
yes.
are getting together and trying to help other countries and help people. This is fascinating. What's happening
A lot
today.
of church doing send food, some
Oh, that story.
medicine.
You got to tell that story about your church in back in Brazil.
Next week.
Oh, okay.
We
Next
are
week.
almost Shabbos.
It's almost Shabbos now.
Yes.
We are getting ready for Shabbat. This is
Yes.
Erev Shabbat. We're going to. This is one of the pleasures and the joys of the Jewish people in the Torah. God tells the Jewish people that on the sixth day, in the evening or Friday evening, we must stop all work, all communication, and the religious people especially, we put away our communication, our phones, our TVs, our cars, and we go home
Electricities.
and we spend the time 24 hours with our family. We sit with our family, we have a nice meal, we sit with our kids, we play games, we go to church, we
Sing,
go to synagogue, we
pray.
sing, we praise God, we
have
sing
a
to God.
Nice, happy day.
We have a beautiful time together and with our friends. We have friends over like everybody, and we do this every week. Friday night, we have like a Thanksgiving meal. So not just once a meal, well, not once a year. We do every Friday, right? We're gonna go home now and we're gonna prepare
A nice
for
meal.
the Shabbat. We're gonna sing Lecha
Dodi likrat kala,
What's the tune?
b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha
Dodi
dodi
likrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
These are the hymns and the praises to the Lord for blessing us with such rain. It's pouring a rain here, but we're blessed to be free and to be able to sit,
Talk
and
about-
talk about good things, talk about the Torah, and inspire. Hopefully, we inspire people, and we're going to continue next week with another class,
Parasuk,
talk, and
Pasuk,
we'll do
yes.
some more study. And
Bring
please
little
God,
more.
we'll inspire each other. You will inspire us. We'll inspire as much as we can, and we encourage you to do the same. Each one of you take your friends and try to inspire people.
All right.
All right,
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Bye, guys.
Bye.